Saskatchewan's premier says it's his preference to deliver the budget in the legislature. So what's holding Scott Moe back? Adam Hunter covers politics for CBC Saskatchewan. Adam, what is the latest from the premier on the legislature resuming?
Well, this week we heard from the premier who said it's his preference and the government's preference to deliver a budget in the assembly and recall the legislature. Now, his preference is different than what they're going to do. And just this afternoon, I have word from the premier's spokesperson who says the government will not be negotiating a recall to the legislature in public with the NDP. Now, today, the NDP leader Ryan Miley issued a bit of an ultimatum, gave a deadline to the province for reconvening the legislature, making a decision on when to come back. Now, we know that the province has suspended all legislative sittings since March 18th. Now, many of the provinces across the country have done this, Fiona, but Saskatchewan and BC are two that remain without coming back, at least even in an emergency situation. So a little bit different what's happening in Saskatchewan. The NDP wants to come back and have the assembly see the budget, have it go through the 28-day process of a debate. The government saying we're going to come up with a plan between the House leaders.
So now, why is Premier Moe leaving it up to the House leaders?
It's a good question. It is his call. He can decide. He does make those sorts of decisions. He's deferring to his House leader and the House leader of the NDP to come up with a plan. Now, if you ask the two sides what their position is on the bargaining of this decision, they're going to give you two different stories. Today, the government saying we had productive talks. They met yesterday. The NDP, on the other hand, said that the government brought nothing to the table, that it was quite a short meeting. So two different accounts of just how eager these two sides are to get back into the assembly. And we do know Scott Moe has said that if there is another resumption of the sitting, that it will look a lot different. We don't know what that means quite yet.
With all this back and forth, when do you expect some kind of final decision?
Well, as I mentioned, the NDP said they want a deadline for Tuesday to have the government come up with some sort of counteroffer or plan. The government's saying they're not going to negotiate in public. So I don't think this will be, settled very soon. We could have some more discussions next week. It seems to be becoming a bit more serious. We had last week Premier Scott Moe saying he hadn't given much thought to the legislature coming back, even though the NDP had been asking for it for a number of weeks.
So now, what are the chances there won't even be a debate on the budget?
I think that is a really interesting question. So this week, Scott Moe kind of laid out the path of what the government's going to do as far as financial reporting before the October election. The NDP is worried that the government's going to go into an election without presenting a full budget. People may have forgotten that on March 18th, when the legislative sitting was suspended, they only presented a spending plan, and it was only presented to the media and the public. It wasn't tabled in the House. They never put the other half of the budget, the revenue projections, out inside the House. So the budget hasn't been presented fully. The NDP says they want to scrutinize that. They think that is necessary before an election, and the public deserves to have some questions answered about how the government's spending its money. So we'll have to see if the two sides can come up to some sort of an agreement in the next number of weeks here. We're getting close to the summer, and it's pretty rare for the Saskatchewan government to sit in the summertime.
So, Adam, this was another really busy week in Saskatchewan politics. Is there any other thing that sort of stands out to you from the week?
There have been just a number of things, especially in the last couple of days, that have gone under the radar. One is the expanded testing that will start next week. We know that phase 2 is starting to open on Tuesday with retail shops opening, hair salons, things like that. But the two big topics that came up in the last 24 hours or so are people concerned about checkpoints between northern Saskatchewan, people from the south trying to get through those checkpoints to fish and go on vacation for the long weekend, maybe go to their cottages, and people in the north saying, well, we can't get out because we want to get groceries or medical supplies, but we're not being allowed to leave because of the ban on travel. The other one is the Pasqua Hospital situation. We know there was one confirmed case of the Pasqua Hospital. The NDP is asking today why that wasn't declared an outbreak. We also have the nurses union saying there was some inconsistency with how other hospital cases were set up, saying that the PA hospital, for example, was declared an outbreak after only one case, but how come the Pasqua Hospital isn't quite at that? So those are two big ones, the checkpoints and the latest case in Regina with the Pasqua Hospital.
Well, thanks so much for this, Adam. You're always doing a great job for us. CBC Saskatchewan political reporter Adam Hunter in Regina.